Okay, so should be live, and I apologize because I don't have the technical know-how to create that 30-second countdown in the beginning, and we also had some organizational troubles. So some of the thumbnails said Leo He Zhao will be our second guest. He might pop in at the last moment, and the other thumbnail said Ian Kummer, who unfortunately couldn't make it today from Moscow. But we are here with your host Ben, your second host Carlo Parcelli from the Belly of the Beast, Washington, and we have Christopher Black from the Great White North. How is everybody doing today?
Very good, very well.
Okay, fine.
Nice. Well, it is International Women's Day, beautiful Soviet legacy. So the Russian sort of policemen are stopping cars and handing over flowers to everybody who goes there. And it is a weird day in the West because the title is The State of the Unions, because I'm honest, I couldn't watch Mr. Biden, but I did watch like a minute intro of it, and he looked angry, discombobulated, and especially all out on Ukraine, which we can sort of watch together, shall we?
Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now, assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away.
Okay, well, let's revisit that at some point in the future, shall we? But yeah, threats everywhere. And to most people, I guess that was enough. But on my continent, I just wanted to show this side by side and then gather your thoughts. We also had the Wicked Witch of the EU, Ursula, making some points about enemies, both foreign and domestic. And I thought we maybe watch that too.
Putin sacrificed the country to save himself. Putin is wanted for war crimes, and he will face justice. And there is a courtroom in The Hague waiting for him, my friends. There can be no doubt. Europe will stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes, with more financial support, more military support. Russia has destroyed houses, hospitals, and kindergartens, but they could not destroy the dream of a free and prosperous Ukraine that takes its place at the heart of the European Union.
All right, well, let's leave it there because I can't take much more of that. It's good thing Israel.
I felt like going Sieg Heil.
Yeah, yeah, it's like that old Molly Ivins reference to a Pat Buchanan speech. It sounded so much better than the original German.
Yeah.
True.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Yeah, how can you deal with a set of lies like that? It's
where do you begin?
Yeah, where do you begin?
And anybody who goes against that is the enemy. Last one, I promise, but this is something that scared me even more.
And here at home, Putin's friends are trying to rewrite our history and hijack our future. They are spreading hate from behind their keyboards. And let there be no doubt what's at stake in these elections. Our peaceful and united Europe is being challenged like never before by populists, by nationalists, by demagogues, whether it's the far right or it's the far left, whether it is distortion.
That's it. Everybody is a Putinist that doesn't agree with our peaceful, warlike Europe.
And we are enemies of the state just by having this program. We're enemies of the world order.
I think so.
Yes.
I see the dictionary as hate, definition of hate equals truth.
Right.
It's in such a warp. So I watched the entire address last night by Biden.
Good thing one of us did.
And he began coming out shooting against Ukraine. That bullshit. And I don't know how many times we can redress the lies that are inherent to their position. And and then he went into a prolonged attack on domestic affairs against the Republicans and what they don't want. So actually, I would say 95% of the speech focused on domestic affairs, and that was very telling. That was very telling to me. I think they want to avoid talking too much about Ukraine, and he actually made a conciliatory remark to China afterwards. The U.S. doesn't want conflict. Well, it's ominous because it seems to me that Ukraine, which they've lost, is exactly he's taking exactly the opposite position, that they're going to keep doubling down on it, and China, that they want to be conciliatory toward, they're actually building up this thing. And I think I agree with the commentators I've been watching that $61 million is not going to go to Ukraine. They're not. It's not going to go through Congress.
It's looking less and less likely, isn't it?
It's less and less likely. Yeah,
not
before the election, at any rate.
No, and even if it did, it wouldn't mean too much on the battlefield. The Russians are advancing. They killed. I just saw the Ministry of Defense report. They've killed over 7,000 Ukrainian soldiers in the past week on different fronts, different parts of the front, and they're advancing as we speak. It's a matter of time before they completely collapse. So what they're going to do to support Ukraine as long as it takes, well, we don't know, but I don't see what they can do. And also, Biden is lying that there are no American troops there. There never will be. They're there. Of course, they're there. They've been killed there. The Patriot battery systems probably are manned by British or Americans.
So are the HIMARS.
They've lost HIMARS, and they've lost 6 or 7 of those Patriot batteries so far. There's a 100-man crew, and they've noticed dead bodies in Avdiivka with American shoulder patches, like regular forces, not just mercenaries, real soldiers, Canadians, Germans, Brits.
I saw Brits.
Yeah, Brits, and they were Americans. They mentioned. They're there. The Germans are there. The British are there. They've killed German regular tank crews. German army, not just continents. So they're all there fighting, and the French got killed. 60 Frenchmen were killed. They were quite clearly regular army officers and subalterns and so on. So Biden is lying when he says there's no Americans there. They are there. The thing is whether they're gonna. What can they do? They can't defeat Russia conventionally. So what does that mean they're going to do? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
That's apparently, the scary part.
Yeah, Mr. I forgot his name, the Italian guy, the head of the International Atomic Energy IAC, something like that. He went to Kiev and to Moscow, and he warned Zelensky not to fire at the ZPP, the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant, which he tried earlier, admittedly. Right. So they might do something extremely desperate. They're doing little pinpricks attacks in the east. 2 people died in Belgorod the other night, so they're attacking Russia here and there. But really, there's not much to do before it all crumbles. I mean, the Western gear, the Wunderwaffe, the beautiful weapons, they're being hunted this week, and they're being showcased. So the Russian Ministry of Defense doesn't usually do this. But look, a tank duel, we took it out. We took out the Abrams with 1 shot. Yeah. We are hunting Patriots, the Iris-T, the SMPT, all of these air defenses. It looks like the end. I mean, there's a reason Miss Newland was retired herself at this ominous moment, but I don't know what the thinking is here, to be honest, on the American part, other than
the American embassy. In the American embassy, RT reports the American embassy stated or warned Americans that there may be some extremist activities or incidents taking place in Moscow in the next few days, which means they probably maybe got some inside groups to, I don't know what, but we can expect the unexpected with the West, because they're capable of anything.
True. Well, I saw this is unofficial news because Slavyangrad, a very good telegram that is Russia, but unofficial news, said the FSB caught an ISIS cell in southern Moscow. That that could, like, within 7 hours of this warning that the US and the UK embassies made. So they're up to very, very desperate things, and I don't know where it goes, but they have a new favorite now, which is Emmanuel Macron. Le Petit Roi, the little king, who seems to be deeply maddened, more mad than Ursula is about everything Russian.
Well, his reaction seems to have taken place after those 60 French soldiers were killed. And there must have been some high-ranking people there. His anger and his statements seem to have come right after that. Somebody in Paris is really angry about that. They didn't think the Russians would do it, but they did.
Yep.
And he wants revenge, and he's trying to provoke everybody into giving it to him, but nobody else wants to go along.
True.
Because the French army hasn't got the capacity to do anything in Ukraine. I mean, they got special forces there and all that, but what can they do en masse? They could send brigades in there. They don't have the capacity.
No, they only have 30,000 men under arms, I understand.
Yeah, I'm the same as the Brits and the Canadians. The British could maybe field a couple of brigades, the same Canadians 1 brigade, the French maybe a couple of brigades. I mean, it's just nothing. And the Russians chew through that in less than a week or 2 weeks, you know. And they would have no air cover, and the Americans couldn't send somebody in. So does that mean they're going to do something more drastic, like a nuclear launch against Russia? I don't know.
That's the main worry. Yeah, I mean, there's British fighters being buzzed over the Black Sea by Russian forces, so they're getting more and more provocative. But I think Macron, you know, a direct fight, he couldn't handle the Sahel. He couldn't handle, you know, Niger or what is it? Central African Republic,
Mali, Chad. They got kicked out of there.
They got kicked out. They're federating. That's -1 for the French, and he's not going to face Russia. But recently, this week, the news headlines have brought him into 2 other fronts. And one was Chisinau, Moldova, and the second one is Mr. Nikol Pashinyan in Armenia. And it seems there are French tentacles in both of these provocative areas. And I'm trying. Like a faded first world country like France. What is Mr. Macron actually thinking? But I can't fathom it. Like, cause some extra pain even though the war is lost. Try to do. I'm not sure.
Well, it seems to me that the war against Russia will continue even though Ukraine is defeated, because that just seems to me one phase of the war. I think to me the war against Yugoslavia was the first phase of the attack against Russia. They knocked out, as Hitler did, Yugoslavia, had to destroy Yugoslavia so they don't have that country on the lower flank. And then they moved east. They've used Ukraine to attack Russia and just disturb Russia, disarray it. And that's being defeated at some cost to Russia. I think even if Ukraine capitulates, that they're still going to continue this war in other ways. They're going to use like the French disturbing them in Transnistria, Moldova, Armenia, stirring up ISIS in the Caucasus, and also they'll try every trick in the book to disturb and create chaos inside Russia or against Russia. I don't think they're going to stop.
It'll be terrorism.
Somebody needs to defeat the people who are intending to do this. I mean, Russia has to come to grips with that concept.
It's terrorism rather than. I think they're going to go through a period of this kind of terrorism. That's all they have left, basically. I don't think. I'm hoping that the nuclear option is not being seriously considered. I'm sure it's being tactically considered, but seriously, I don't know. There isn't.
You know, there's a lot of investment, not just pride and this kind of not first worldism, but exceptionalism, both on the part of leaders of Europe and America. A lot is at stake. We are the #1 bad dogs, and if they win, then NATO doesn't look so good, and they can cope all they want about the Baltics being basically a NATO lake. Look at us, we're stronger and united than ever. They can't face Russia with their combined might. I just want to take it back for a second to the State of the Union address, because Mr. Biden started kind of, I guess, comparing himself to Roosevelt, right, to 1941, thinking it's that sort of dangerous historic moment. And both him and Miss Ursula sounded like the other side of that war to me. They really did, both of them.
And you might quote Medvedev's comment on TASS about it, but who brings out the salient point that Roosevelt was an ally of Russia. a strong ally of Russia. And Russia and the United States were friends at that time, along with Britain and Canada and France, fighting the fascists. But now, how can he compare himself to Roosevelt when he's taken the exact opposite tack and attacking Russia?
Right.
He did nothing to the United States. The Russians don't understand why you're doing this to us.
Yeah,
So
remember that Ursula started her statement saying they are rewriting our history, when it looks like they are engaged in the most blatant rewriting of history, forgetting Auschwitz and the liberation, the entire history of World War II.
Right.
Stunning lack of self-awareness I see in both of these cases.
Yeah. And the same with the British. I mean, you have the Biden, but his State of the Union, he seemed to, like Carlos says, gave brushstrokes to the Ukraine issue, but then moved on to domestic affairs. I'm not sure. So what does that mean? What does it mean that Newland has resigned? Did she resign because of internal squabbling about strategy or tactics, or did she resign because she sees the writing on the wall that Biden's going to lose the election, and she's getting out now to take another position?
We can speculate.
Then we'll come back later on, as she's done before, to control things in other ways. It's very strange what's happening, and then we have Lloyd Austin with his threat about he made to Congress about Russia, and the United States is going to be at war with Russia if Ukraine's defeated. Well, Ukraine is defeated. So
NATO is.
What did you say from Lloyd Austin's statement? What does that mean?
Here's the logic. We have to get before the war. We have to get Ukraine into NATO so Russia doesn't attack. But now that Ukraine's going to end, Putin's going to attack NATO, right? Because of victory.
Right.
And the Ukrainians are coping. We could take it to another direction, saying that a victory for Russia will be bad news for Africa for some reason. It was in the Ukrainian Pravda. Yeah. So it's projecting everywhere.
And then you've got all these side deals, these side security agreements being signed between Canada and Ukraine, Britain and Ukraine, France and Ukraine. I don't know who else.
UK, they started it. Mr. Sunak was first in Kiev, yeah.
So that seems to me that, NATO won't get involved formally, but NATO will be involved piecemeal by signing these side security deals. But when they kick in, it's unclear, because they talk about future attacks. I have no idea what they're really trying to establish there.
I didn't read them all, but one I did read was the British one, and I looked for the word guarantee, and it was one sentence that Ukraine guarantees IP, international property security for British whatever. There's no it's not worth the paper it's written on. It's no security guarantees. Basically,
propaganda.
Economic arms deal. That's kind of what's in there. No real guarantees, but that's what they're doing, because NATO is also a paper tiger, as Mao once said, and it's been proven now.
It is true. I was also surprised, but I watched the speech briefly. I also got fed up, but there was
I tuned out.
a lot of heckling, but I never saw that before, really. Catcalls and from what's her name, Marjorie Taylor Greene, all these people. And
she recently told a reporter to fuck off. That was a great moment, though.
Yeah. Is that usual to have heckling like that when the president's addressing the nation?
Carlo?
No, it began with the last. It began with the last State of the Union address that Biden gave. It's very unusual. It's not like the British Parliament, where you have shouting back and forth usually.
Yeah.
And actually, the Speaker of the House, Johnson, asked that they not do it, and they did it anyway. One of the hecklers lost his son, I think, in the retreat from Afghanistan. So he was yelling that, and there was Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think Boebert kept quiet this time, maybe because she's bashed, but her son was recently arrested on 22 burglary charges. So she's probably a little, going a little back, taking a little back with her kind of platitudes and nonsense. But I think the focus on domestic policy and the attacks on Trump that Biden did were meant to, or were just meant for the election coming up. I mean, that's really what's foremost in his mind, and he doesn't want to talk about Ukraine too much because that's a losing proposition for him. As much even in your recent paper that we read this morning, you have to reprise what happened, Chris. You have to reprise what happened in 2014 in Ukraine, the Maidan coup and all. How many times do we have to say this over and over again? But now it's kind of hit a point where people that don't know anything about it are still against the Ukraine war. So Americans can remain uninformed fools and ninnies and dupes and suckers, but at the same time, they can put the kibosh. They can undermine I'm going to say it, the deep state's plans to destabilize Russia and to bring Putin down, because it's just gone on too long. It's not. They don't know that the U.S. is not winning. They don't know anything about. Ukraine and NATO and the U.S. are not winning. They may even think they're still winning, but they're still not. They're still against it. I don't want to belabor this, but I saw.
There's a new AP poll about this. About support for
a biased reporter for the Democrats going along with a bunch of MAGA people and asking them about Ukraine. They were all against it, but not one of them brought up, and that could have been edited out, but not one of them brought out any of the history, the Maidan coup, the Minsk Accords, the whole the bombing of the Donbass, shelling of the
it's the same here. Nobody you talk to seems to know any of the history, and you can tell them repeatedly, and it just goes out of their mind.
Yeah,
they just read what they read in the CBC or the national news or whatever, and that's it.
Yeah, true. Even with that, the public opinion seems to be turning against any support for Ukraine, even uninformed.
Yeah. And what Chomsky says about the academics is true. I put myself through a couple of lectures by a professor at Harvard. I got his name written down here, and a professor at Princeton, but I can't remember their names. But the guy at Harvard was saying, well, the United States didn't want the Soviet Union to fall. They wanted Gorbachev to maintain the Soviet Union. And I'm going, well, if they didn't want the Soviet Union to fall, why did they attack it since its inception?
Yeah.
Militarily, economically, culturally.
Something like 14 invading armies physically attacking it in its crib.
This guy's teaching at Harvard. Then the Princeton guy goes, in the Minsk Accords, Russia wanted to take over 5 oblasts. I never heard 5. I heard 4. So I looked it up, and what he maybe was talking about was Mykolaiv. But I went to the Accords, and there's no mention of Mykolaiv in the Accords.
Yeah, and Russia wouldn't have taken them over. They would have had some autonomous status within Ukraine.
Yes,
they would have remained part of Ukraine. That's what Putin said. They're just crazy because they could have had it all. They just refused.
Liars. And people are spending $120,000 a year to send their kids to these liars. Liars. And it's just producing more liars.
Yeah. Yeah. Tragically, that's true.
Just a week before Miss Nuland resigned, there was a statement that this isn't the Russia we wanted. We wanted a partner, a compliant, all that. Well, then why did you engineer this for the last couple of decades if you wanted a compliant partner in Russia? I mean, I look at any footage that comes out of Moscow, I see relief, not just from the leadership, from Putin, from the people saying, finally, we got this over with. We are done with the West. I don't think there's going to be, even though China is trying, other than complete surrender, I don't think there's going to be a peace meeting, a ceasefire of any sort, but who knows?
No. I mean, a ceasefire in Ukraine, or
I'm talking Ukraine. Yeah, China is getting involved in the diplomatic front in both areas, so in Gaza as well as Ukraine.
Yeah. And Putin sounds more and more. I'm dreaming, and I'm probably naive. He's not, but he talks more and more in a socialistic way. In the World Youth Festival conference or meeting, he spoke to the youth and saying life is not fair. The poor are oppressed. The poor don't get. They're thrown into the world with different circumstances from the rich. We have to support them. We have to make sure everybody has the same ability to flourish as human beings. This sounds like really socialist stuff to me. But,
Sounds like Zhuganov speaking, doesn't it?
I mean, he's still got this imbued. He grew up this way. No, he's a capitalist. He's still got these ideas in his head he grew up with. It was just part of his being, maybe. But anyway, it gives us hope that. Anyway, he's much more enlightened than anybody we've got here in Canada or the United States or Sunak in Britain, America. I mean, just a bunch of clowns. Here in Canada, they're just celebrating Nazis still. I mean, they has done some good things, though. The Trudeau, under some left-wing pressure, brought in free dental care, which is quite something, and then free drugs now. So he's being pushed. He's trying to stay in power by swinging to the left a bit. But nevertheless, it's a good thing for working people. But foreign policy-wise, they're just vassals of the United States.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Europe as well, very same as Canada, unfortunately. Most of it.
And the opposition is no better. I mean, sure, the NDP here, the sort of semi-Labour Party, Social Democratic Party, which pushed these free medical services we finally got on top of free medical care. They never get more than 30-40% of the vote. The Conservatives never more than 20 to 35%. So probably Trudeau will stay in power.
Oh no!
Yeah, because if you get Poilievre, it's going to be worse. He's going to follow the same American policies. He's more gung ho on Ukraine than Trudeau is. He's more gung ho in support of Israel than Trudeau is. So you're stuck with Trudeau probably for quite a while.
See, that's why
I'm not sure if we're stuck with which we're stuck with in the United States, Trump or Biden. Does it make much difference, Carlo? I mean, for the working person.
That's why I didn't watch the full speech. Yeah. Doesn't really matter to me all that much.
It doesn't. Biden pointed out that Trump signed his tax restructuring, put $2.1 trillion into the hands of the 1%, which is pretty accurate. And there is a new plan by the Republicans to do it again.
The Brits are doing the same. Tax cuts. That's the name of the new budget.
Cuts, right? And no, I don't think they'll ultimately be. One example is I was mentioning it to Ben, is that there's another minor genocide occurring in Western Africa, and that's
I hadn't heard about this.
That's with Morocco
and Western Sahara, right?
Yeah, Western Sahara. Yeah, torturing and murdering the Western Saharan people, plundering their fisheries and their natural resources, and of course, the irony is the United Nations has just named President Zhao of Morocco, the head of the Human Rights Council of the United Nations. So he's the more people you murder, apparently the stronger you can human rights protector you are. Somehow it's like a bizarro world. But Trump
Whereas,
Trump was the one. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to interject that the same thing is going on in Haiti. There's this barbecue guy, and they're calling him a gangster. They're calling him a thug. Every headline, if you look up Dan Cohen, he's the one who's got the full story.
Haiti is another story altogether. I'd like to discuss of it, but Trump was the one who signed a declaration saying that the U.S. recognized that Western Sahara was part of Morocco, and that gave the Moroccans this tremendous leverage, which has now manifest itself in the United Nations because of course, Biden and his people are all for this guy Zhao, this murderer, to head the Human Rights Council. So here you have that kind of irony again, and there's no change in U.S. policy. And that began with Trump. So no, there's not going to be any change. Haiti, I have one thing to say. One thing to say about Haiti. One person to talk about, and that's Father Aristide, Jean-Bertrand Aristide.
Mhm.
I thought
He
you
could have
might.
straightened it out. He was, they met. They called his supporters, his young supporters, gangs, and they weren't gangs. They were people who really wanted to get behind uh, Aristide's Aristide's plans for the country, and the United States cooed him twice. They removed him twice because they didn't want that. That's all you need to know about the United States and foreign policy is the way they treated Haiti, the Duvaliers, Papa Doc and Baby Doc. That's all you need to know about the cruelty of U.S. foreign policy, the absolute murderous foreign policy that exists in the United States, it's all spite in a way. It seems
Yeah.
to be since it was the first black um revolt in the world against slavery, Toussaint Louverture,
Right.
that
All of Central America looks
they're
that way,
still
except for
they're
Cuba.
still they're still making them pay for it, and the French literally made them pay for it. That the Haitian governments that followed the independence had to pay $150 million in 19th century coinage and 20th century
Cooped.
coinage to the French government. I mean, and French, which went to the French landowners. It was, dispersed among these slave owners. It's what more do you need to know about the West and the
Well,
U.S.?
the incident in which they overthrew him in 2004 with Canadians' military help because they needed French-speaking soldiers to control the airport in Port-au-Prince. So they used our Special Forces JTF-2F, Joint Task Force 2, occupied the airport and helped the Americans. Put a gun to Aristide's head, and what did they do with him? Not just take him out of power, they put him on a plane in shackles and kidnapped him and sent him to Africa and dumped him off in Africa.
Yeah.
This just shows how colonial their thinking is.
Mm.
That they not only remove a person from power, but we're going to make your life even worse. We're going to send you into exile to Africa. How do you like that? It shows everything about what they think
Really?
and how they view the world. And of course, nobody here in Canada knows that we did that. I mean, it's been mentioned in articles, but the average person has no clue. And the government is still talking with the American government about sending troops in there to control the gangs, which we know really are the people trying to express their discontent with what's going on there.
Yeah, what brings me hope is Africa, which I think is set to be like one of the richest continents in the world if it can finally break this shackle that Europe and the West had on it for a long time. Sorry, I'm less knowledgeable about Haiti and Central America, but I'm sure it's bloody. But Nigeria, who was gung ho about ECOWAS and going to topple Niger, they're now joining BRICS. Like the foreign minister told this in an interview to Sputnik Radio. So they're slowly switching sides. I mean, the US talks about some drone bases in the West and in the South, but it looks increasingly like Africa. China brings in development, infrastructure, economy, and Russia defends against, for example, the French bastards who, they came in as anti-terrorists and terrorism went by 10,000% or something like that. I've read a couple of months ago, and it looks like they're finally cleaning this up. I mean, one headline, it sounds like Lavrov, but it isn't. It was in Sputnik saying, "We are returning to our tradition. Russia is honoring its anti-colonial past, while Ukraine has Nazis, basically. Backs the West backs neo-Nazis."
Well, yeah, and you get the UK doing the same thing. They got this plan to deport, to persuade people not to come to Britain, migrants to flow to Britain. If you come to Britain, we're going to deport you. Not to the country you came from, which is what they should do.
Rwanda.
We're going to send you to Rwanda, in the middle of a small country in Central Africa, run by the world's most murderous dictator, Paul Kagame. He has murdered millions and millions of people in Central Africa. And you're going to dump you there. So for them, the British, who regard Rwanda, Central Africa, as a dumping ground, as a garbage dump.
There's no clear indication.
No, it's just and of course Kagame goes along with this because he's being paid. Again, he's a criminal, and he's one of the worst murderers in the world. Anyway, a brutal man.
Frau Hitler, Miss Ursula, has a similar plan for the EU. They just announced, like a Rwanda-style deportation plan to curb the far right. That is the official talking point.
Oh, where would they deport them to?
That's a good question, because I actually didn't go into that. But you know what?
Jesus.
I'll find out.
We have to invent another Australia in the 1840s, and everybody gets deported to this place, Van Diemen's Land or somewhere.
Yeah.
No, it's just insane. I mean, the people, and they can't even see their own hypocrisy, their own colonial mindset. When Sunak proposes this idea, or the Canadians, Americans overthrow Aristide, or attack Grenada in 1983. I mean, where the Cubans actually put up a stiff fight.
They did.
They did.
And they were engineers.
They were engineers, and they still caused a lot of
forces.
casualties. Yeah, they did. They put up a stiff fight. Those engineers.
Yeah, I don't see an actual destination. Just safe third-party states is where they're going to dump people. States. But yeah, I imagine it's in Africa somewhere.
Gee whiz.
So maybe we should talk about the British election in Rochdale.
Oh well, yeah. George Galloway.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the Workers' Party of Britain, his party, has like tripled the members ever since he got in, and just basically rubbed his shoe with the people who try to interview him in an adverse way. And it's amazing to see just someone sane in Europe. And I hope this spreads. We need 1 million Galloways in Europe, and I guess in America and Canada as well.
Yeah,
go for it.
Yeah. I would have voted for him. He's he's not. I'm not sure he's a real red, but he's quite close enough. And I would have supported him and voted for him, because that's a big shift. And the Labour Party needs to get slapped, as he said they were, along with the Conservatives, because Labour there has just become a joke.
Jesus, Keir Starmer.
I mean, it's possible that if they have enough candidates, everybody could go over to his Workers' Party. That would be quite something. If Labour
he's what I would call a radical social democrat, not a communist, but close.
Yeah,
close. And he had the right take on Israel and Gaza for something like 40, 50 years now, all his life. He's absolutely correct on Ukraine and the foreign intervention blunders. Yeah, more of him, more like him, please.
Yeah, and too bad we didn't have the real left, and the Labour Party still active, but I guess they've all passed on now. I remember my father wrote his memoir, and he said that the year he was born, 1924. This is his first opening paragraph was that was the year Lenin died, and he said. Several months later, the Labour Party kicked out all the communists, and then the Labour Party then fell 3 months after that. So he ties the three together. Yeah. And instead of kicking out the communists, and Labour Party collapses as a government in Britain, never came back. Well, they did come back in 26, 27, and then there was a general strike, and they could have seized all power, but they just backed down and gave it back to the elite.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Carlo.
Galloway's positions on Ukraine and Gaza are far more important than his defects. I wish he could get over his.
Yes.
Two defects. One is he can't abide the LGBTQ community. He's made derogatory comments about statesmen, Tories, and the Labour Party, who can't distinguish between a man and a woman. Look, there's chicks with dicks, okay, and men love. Some men love chicks with dicks, and they fuck them in the ass.
It's International Women's Day, Carlo. Come on,
get over it.
Well, I don't think he's against homosexuals or how people have sex. That's their own private business. But I think he's like Putin. He's against promoting the idea that that's more than normal and should be encouraged by among other people who are not that way.
Yeah, exactly on the same page.
That's where he gets the objection.
Same as Orban and same as Jyoti Bra's party, CPGBML, who always get labeled transphobe. Fine.
Yeah, but the thing is it's a matter of free speech. For instance, right now we have Showtime and HBO, Rosalie and I, as part of our deal to have internet, and they have a show on Showtime about chicks with dicks and the men who love them. And I haven't watched it. I flipped through it because I'm not interested in that. That's not my bag. My bag is women. And so it's like, and it's a burden. I really love women. And
you mentioned
I'll confess it right here. But
you mentioned two floors of Galloway. There's a second.
Those people have been oppressed for so long, and they had to live in the closet and under conditions, beaten by police, arrested, killed by police, arrested by police, ostracized, denied employment, murdered. And I don't care. I don't mind them having a bit of a voice now. Let them have a voice.
Well, I think that's the voice.
The other defect he has is coal.
Coal.
He's for the miners of coal. Oh. So when he talks about climate change, like he did last night, which I watched, he just he says, I believe in climate change, but my constituency are largely made up of miners.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
He kind of tails off with that contradiction. So those are the two things. I mean, I don't want to rain on his parade because I think it's really important what he's saying as regards foreign policy. But there's a couple of things that, if you're an adult male or female, you got to get over this shit. You just got to get over it. My God, it's not that hard.
Okay.
Sexuality is a complicated thing.
No, it
is. But I mean, just a comment on that. A lot of homosexual groups, or some have come out, and I agree with them, that those mainly men now, because you don't see this phenomenon being expressed too much among women. It seems to be mainly men who claim they feel like women and are women is really anti-homosexual. It seems to be a reaction that men who like men are now feel so ashamed of being convinced that it's not good to like men as a man. Therefore, you must be a woman. That's why I like men, because really deep down I'm a woman. When this is not so.
Yeah,
and I think it's somehow morphed into, instead of being proud to be homosexual, because that's what not because it's great to be, but I am one, and I should not be suppressed or oppressed or allowed to be who I want and have sex the way I want and be with people I want to be with. Now they're saying, I'm not proud of that anymore. I don't feel right I must be a woman if I like men. And this is really quite bizarre to me.
Well, I'm talking about people who have who have breast augmentation and take hormones, yet would keep their male genitalia. Yeah. That's what I mean by chicks with dicks.
Oh, yeah, like those.
Our friend Doherty just came in. Yep. He said that Galloway is for equal opportunities for all. Yeah? Well, then why the fuck does he have to mention that in every fucking show I watch?
I don't know.
He's got a hang-up about it. I don't trust people that have hang-ups about it.
Right. As Trudeau said, what goes on in the bedrooms of the nation should stay there, and it's nobody's business.
That is Putin's point of view.
Exactly. Yeah, that's his point of view, exactly.
You have civil unions in Russia. People live together and have sex in multiple different ways. What you don't do is the chicks with dicks HBO stuff that Carlo mentioned Showtime. Showtime is not to be aimed at kids. It's simple. It's normal. I don't understand, especially on International Women's Day, how we went in this direction. And also the climate. I have a compilation of Western headlines where the climate justice movement is creating gender inequality. They wash these two together, and you already know all the foreign policy goals that the US has. It always goes hand in hand with this. In the meantime, we're not talking about, I think it was the Bank of America had this warning that every 100 days you get 1 extra trillion in debt. So that's 3 trillion a year. No. We're supposed to think it's the 1990s. Homosexual and trans people are being oppressed and killed. No, it's not the 1990s. They're more represented than you and me. I'm sorry, but I had to push back because I don't think your information on this is. Also, someone needs to mention that among trans folk, there's like a 60% of them who commit suicide. I mean, everybody gets a little confused when going through puberty. That's normal. It's a new option as a teenager to mutilate yourself, go on hormone therapy, and then get sadder than ever and end your life.
That's very difficult.
That's not healthy for any society.
No, that's
I'm fine with that.
That's very difficult to do. You end up in the courts. It takes years. Most doctors, most professionals in the medical profession won't touch it, won't deal with it. They tell the kids to wait. It's not something that's done very often. That's media hype. They love that it sells newspapers, as the old term goes. That's not a big deal. That's very minimal.
It's healthy.
Shifting to your second point about getting off
climate,
because it's quite a complicated thing. But George Galloway's supported the coal industry because he supports miners and workers. That's a problem with the left generally. I mean, I keep seeing these memes. If only we had socialism tomorrow, climate change would be solved. Well, I don't see that because the left has no solutions. I don't see any solutions offered by the left to climate change any more than on the right, because. If we have a socialist economy or a capitalist one, they both use the same production and distribution methods. They exploit the same resources. Sure, a socialist government may make wiser decisions about how to escape that, but I don't see
planning.
Planning, but I don't see any such plans. Even the Chinese are trying to do things, but it's not quick enough because the situation is pretty bad. But there's quite a strong tendency on the left to support things which are bad for the planet because it supports workers locally. I mean, you see that contradiction all the time, and there's always a pushback.
Look at the U.S. arms industry, isn't it? It's terrible for the world, but gives you a job.
It's the jobs, yeah, exactly. Offers jobs, which is something it's hard to convince people of, that your job depends on killing other people or supplying weapons to kill other people. Well, I don't really want to think about that. Otherwise, I don't have a job. I have a nice life with this job. So,
the U.S. military is the largest polluter in the world.
Yeah, something that doesn't really get made that point. Or did you hear about the Nord Stream's impact on climate? I don't remember reading about that.
Yeah, there were some articles by some scientists said it was one of the worst pollution incidents in the world's history.
I just
amount of methane that was in the atmosphere. It raised temperatures a couple of degrees for a few weeks, apparently. I don't know.
And the military itself recognizes that it's contributing to global climate change. And when I mentioned that, I'm repeating myself here, but when I mentioned that on Breitbart, the Bannon site, that the U.S. military was concerned about climate change, I got death threats. I got people screaming at me.
I think it was Mark Milley who said we're going to have electric tanks, right? EV
electric tanks.
I remember that. Yeah, I mean, looking for a charging station in the battlefield is going to be something beautiful. But I remember that.
But then I went to Military Times, and I just copied out 14 articles that had the military tactically concerned about climate change, the North Pole, and the new sea routes with the melting ice and all that. So for them, it's a strategic matter, but they're still concerned about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and bases like in Norfolk can be flooded, and San Diego, if the sea rises, and they're going to lose those bases, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, let's. It looks like that there's a disagreement in chat, and there's a bit of a disagreement amongst us, which is healthy. So I'm happy to push back a little again on this one, because I see the climate mania, especially in the Europe, the Green parties. It's very much aimed at preventing Africa from having the well-being that we are accustomed to. I see it as a foreign policy objective, and there's a difference between science, as in an institute, a national institute, and science owned by bourgeois interests. You know, just remember the tobacco issue, or go back to cancer, or any of these things, and you see that the science, when bought, is very different from the science. And I wish I had this clip. I had it with subtitles. I don't have it now. There was this Russian scientist in an Arctic station, and he reported back to Putin. He said, my life's work, pretty much everything I've documented here, is that we have about 10,000 years of stable climate ahead. Okay? That's a perspective that just doesn't get mentioned. I'm sure that
it's wrong. It's not right. I mean, I see these things and it's all bullshit. The climate, we're in a situation, we got nothing. I'm telling you, the things are so catastrophic. You're going to see temperatures rise here so fast, you're not going to be able to survive. Crops are not going to be able to. It's not that they're going to rise so fast, you're going to have crop failures around the world, mass starvation very soon.
Well, we have a doom, and Europe is talking about a water crisis, by the way. They're gaming out a water crisis.
We have the same thing in Mexico now. We have drought here. We have drought and they're killing cattle in the West, in Canada now. They've announced hundreds of farmers are slaughtering thousands of head of cattle because there's been drought there for 2 years. They got no feed.
I'm okay with that.
They're killing the bison, killing cattle. They're doing the same thing in the United States, and you got these fires in Texas. The thing is catastrophic. The temperature is rising very fast. We're causing it, and nobody's doing anything about it. I do agree with you, though, that the green movement, so-called green ecological movement, supporting wind turbines and all electric cars, it's just a bunch of nonsense. It's not going to solve the problem. It's going to make it worse. And yes, it does. It also used as an excuse to maintain development in the West and then suppress it elsewhere. That's also true. But the fact is, if you look at all the reputable climate scientists, not these charlatans who come up with these statements, we're in a very bad situation, and nobody's doing a damn thing about it.
I don't disagree that the climate is changing and we might be in a bad situation. I'm saying it's blown out of proportion by some of these media proponents.
I think it's not blown out of proportion. I don't think people realize how bad it is. I mean, the temperatures are rising. We're now officially 2 to 2.5 degrees C above 1900 levels. And at 3C, human extinction occurs. That's the agreement on all the scientists. 3C were gone not because we couldn't maintain air conditioning and the heat for a while, but crop failures around the world are going to happen everywhere.
Okay, well, you brought in the planned economy, and I think most people know that there's more solar energy that's been installed last year than the US installed in all of its history in China. So there is a difference.
There is a difference, yeah.
And I'm not blind to Russia still being a capitalist state, meaning that climate scientist in the Arctic, it might have had some economic goals in mind. The Arctic opens up to shipping, for example. Yeah, I'm not blind to that. I'm just saying there doesn't seem to be such a solid consensus. Well, you say the established climate scientists, but like 100 people signed an open letter to the New York Times. This was a couple of months ago, saying it's absolutely been blown out of proportion. But yeah, I'm happy to be convinced otherwise.
Oh, okay. I can try and convince you later sometime.
Yeah. No. I'm happy for a disagreement, engagement.
Yeah, no. As far as climate, I mean, there was a scientist, talking about Russian scientists. There was one who has a famous video. You can find it. She did it with another Russian scientist 10 years ago now. She said that their studies of the warming of the Arctic and the unfreezing of the tundra, the permafrost, is so bad that it could release 50 megatons of methane within a few weeks, and that could happen at any time. And
in the permafrost, a bomb.
You can expect it. And then once that happens, the temperature on Earth will rise to 18 degrees centigrade in a few weeks. All life on Earth will be killed. Nobody can survive that. And that's how bad it is. But nobody's doing anything. Nobody. But I do agree that the ecological movement is really just a band-aid. It's just an evasion of what's really happening. I don't think people really do. I can send you many, many articles to convince you otherwise, but my opinion is that it's very, very bad, and that we risk that the wars in Ukraine and the threat of nuclear war are minor compared to what's happening with the climate and around the world.
We just can't catch a break, can we? We started with nukes and we ended up with the world ending. I'm so sorry.
Well, it's very depressing. I mean, I'm so depressed about it. I was writing 3 novels. I stopped because what's the point? I mean, you don't mind if you write a novel nobody buys, but maybe 1,000 years somebody might read it and say, "What a great guy that was." Nobody paid attention to him. But there's not going to be anybody in 1,000 years the way they're saying. This is very depressing. It's not just there's no future, there's no point to anything.
I admit then,
depressing.
Christopher, that my bias, I guess, also comes from, I don't want to see such a negative end. Now that I'm beginning to see hope in the world with Russia, with China, Iran, and others, I just don't want to. It doesn't matter. It's all going to end. I don't want to get into that frame of mind because
I agree with you. I'm sorry I'm stuck in it, but because it is very depressing. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Maybe you're right and I'm wrong. I hope so.
What I tell my Christian friends are when Jesus comes back, he'll be coming back to an empty house. Sherman Rowling, a climatologist, about 40 years ago, wrote his wife. He said, the work is going well, but it looks like the end of the world. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that what I feel is responsible, and this is why climate change can't be reversed, is it's actually the modern scientific method that's causing it deep down. It's the mathematization of what Hegel called the quantification of the sciences, beginning with Newton and Leibniz, or maybe before that with the calculus, that has transformed the sciences into a seemingly objective reflection of what the world is, but it's actually creating its own world, a new world of numbers, of algorithms, of systems theory, all these mathematically based interpretations of nature, and that which leads to technologies which are divorced from nature, that don't take nature into account. And I've written used to write a lot about this, and mostly disguised in poetry, but I did a couple of articles for Science is Culture, and I was ridiculed. I was lambasted for that notion, because it's so nihilistic that even China's best efforts, take for example solar panels, they used highly toxic materials.
It's very dirty to produce. I know. Yeah.
And they're not biodegradable. Yeah. And they do wear out. So, or take Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs so many servers that they generate so much heat that it's having an influence on climate change now.
True.
Ben has a good point, though. I mean, to go back and bring back the hope.
Bring back the hope, Christopher.
Yeah, Putin has announced an increase a new department that's devoted to ecology and preserving the climate, and more studies. China is doing lots of things.
Yeah, I was hoping in tandem with China.
Maybe they can come up with a solution. There are offered solutions. The Mirror project, run out of Harvard by a Chinese guy named Yue, I think his name is, putting mirrors to reflect more light and cool the planet down while we transition away from these fossil fuels, which takes lots of time. So that project could cool the planet and more effectively than all these band-aids or electric cars, which only make things worse, really. Yeah. So maybe there's some hope. I'm hoping that something to happen.
Yeah, NEVs, the Chinese are flooding the world with NEVs, and they are definitely part of the future. But, you need power. And what we really need is a breakthrough in fusion, in a higher level than just basic. I think we're at 4th generation nuclear power generation, but we need to get to a higher degree before all that. And by the way, when I saw that you were going to be the guest, I knew Carlo would bring up Hegel at some point, so I'm very happy for that. But Carlo, I have to tell you that mathematics predates parasitic capitalism and its resource hunger.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there was an acceleration.
Yeah.
If you look at mathematics before the calculus and that era, it has much less influence on the impact on nature than it does afterwards. It's not a coincidence that the calculus and the age of imperialism and the age of discovery and the are
I love that they call it discovery,
because the technologies that came out of things like the calculus led to technologies that advanced imperialism and the enslavement of the world. Well, that's also, I'm just saying, this also the enslavement of nature, and turning and the interpretation of nature as being binary, or even human nature as being a product of a binary system of zeros and ones is an abomination. It's an abomination. If there were a God, it would be abomination before God. Unfortunately, there's no God, so there's no abomination. He can't go, oh, you fucked it up. To me, it's so fucking obvious. The evidence is so obvious.
Okay.
It's too bad we don't have
the degradation of the climate began. The Industrial Revolution, all of that.
It's too bad they stole
all traceable back to mathematics. And
guys, mathematics is evil.
The acceleration that occurred just post-Renaissance.
It's too bad we don't have Tesla still around, because if his ideas and theories, as stated, are correct, if he actually discovered how to draw electricity out of the air and the earth for free and pass it around for free, then we wouldn't have these problems.
True enough, Nicola, the greatest
if his
ever.
laboratory had burned down with all the documentation. Though I understand that the FBI came in and took documentation out of his apartment when he died, it's under wraps. They're not releasing it.
That's right.
Well, I think retroactively I would call this episode Just Abandon All Hope or something like that, but I refuse, Carlo. I just refuse. If you watch the movie, there's 2 episodes now, Chinese movie, Wandering Earth. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh, I've seen it. It's very good.
It's beautiful, but when you talk about enslavement of nature, I don't see an issue with that, because, ants have been built their ant farms for 1 million years, the same as otter, there's dams. Human is the animal that shapes the environment around him. And there's different ways to do it. Some are destructive, some are constructive. I have no issue with interfering in nature. It just has to be done in a different way. And I think Dust James pointed out, all I'd say is that's not what I know as green. That is ecological civilization. China does have massive plans and massive organs of government dedicated to this. And we hear from Chris that Russia is also increasing in this direction. So yeah, my thing at the end here, if I don't know how much time you have, Chris, is just don't abandon hope. Nihilism is the end. That would be my point.
Well, I was amused to see Putin, as reported on TASS, he was speaking at the military aviation school for female pilots, and
this flower's not for you, Shoigu. That one.
No, and he was stating that he was telling me he's flown his various aircraft, but the one he most enjoyed was flying a hang glider in 2012 with I think it was cranes. He was flying. He prepared 6 months to fly this hang glider and fly along with the cranes as they migrated, because he was interested in the ecology and how it was climate change was affecting their movements and so on. So there's hope. Yeah, I guess there's some hope there. They don't get any Western leader doing that.
That's becoming like a meme. Like, do you know the website Kim Jong-un looking at things? It's just a million picture of him looking at things, and now it's Vladimir Putin driving things. There's a compilation, you know, a Kamaz truck, the White Swan aircraft. I forgot that. I forgot the glider, by the way. I remember the mini submarine and all that. Yeah. Go ahead, Carla.
Let me just mention one more thing, and then we can drop it and go to something else.
Okay.
In quantum theory, there are 13 paradoxes that are unresolved: position, momentum, wave, particle, Wheeler's paradox. You can look them up.
That's interesting, Phil.
And in the 30s, people like Heisenberg and Born and Niels Bohr and they were trying to come up with a way of using not mathematics so much as language to explain these paradoxes, Schrodinger's cat, that sort of thing. They
observer's
paradox. It could not be done in language. Then you have World War II, and after World War II, the people who dominated the quantum theory were mathematicians, primarily John von Neumann and people like that, who had come to the United States, who believed, and a lot of American mathematicians, that you didn't need to address those paradoxes, that they could become overcome mathematically, and so you could build technologies without knowing that what the underlying nature was actually telling you or saying vis-a-vis these paradoxes. And all these technologies were developed, and they're successful in the short term, but in the long term, they're all environmentally disastrous. And I could name, you can go one after the other, and they've just been awful pollutants to the earth. And so it's a perfect, if it's a way of saying, look, we got to a point where we couldn't explain nature, that is the paradoxes in quantum, but we're going to go ahead anyway because we have the mathematics that can override the natural contradictions that we can't explain, and I think that's going way beyond being a steward for the planet. That's going way beyond of caring about what happens to the planet. And I just,
Well, if you want to go back to the Biden address, which is a topic you brought up, I don't see Biden addressing any of these issues in that speech. In fact, he didn't really address the American average working person, offering him anything in that speech. He promised to cap some drug costs or something, or some extra billing costs. But there was no talk about national health care, free health care for the people, which exists in most countries, many countries in the world. There was no restoration of the education system, restoring its glory days when they actually taught people things and taught them how to think and reason. There was nothing offered to the American people, the working class, that I saw in that speech whatsoever. So these interesting issues about climate change and whether it's hopeful or hopeless or the wars. I mean, what's he doing? What's he doing for the American people? What are they doing? I mean, in Canada, we're getting free dental care. What's happening in the United States? Why is nothing being given?
The one I watched, which is Ursula, I didn't see her offering anything to the farmers who are protesting across Europe, except for Hungary and post-Yugoslavia. For some reason, these places are quiet, but everywhere north and west is just everywhere. But, I'm just going to push back a little bit. I feel we can sort of to wind it down, if you like, that I feel skeptical when I read a headline. This was in Reuters, I think, the beginning of the week, that Janet Yellen, who is the US Fed, the Treasury bitch, starts visit to Chile with focus on the energy transition. I think that it's imperialism, it's fortunes, it's weapons. That's what's under the guise of all this. But forgive me if I become skeptical, because
no, I agree with you that that the capitalists use any crisis to make money, and so they'll try and make money off this one. That's what they're trying to do. It's clear.
This was an interesting comment from Fleur. I don't know. I haven't looked this over, but that would also be an interesting development if they're no longer reporting the scientific data. Of course, there is an all-out war.
I don't know about that because they have many papers they publish. And if you look on the there's a free science site the Chinese post on a lot of papers. I'm not sure that's correct.
I just want to say one thing. I want to address Dust's remark. Dust Nelson.
Sure.
No.
This one, right?
Yeah. Math is the language of mathematics. It's not the language of anything else. If it's the language of mathematics. It's even divorced from its own notion of science. And it's certainly divorced from nature. It's mathematics is a language unto itself. It's a way of overriding, like I just expressed, paradox. If you can explain to me in language paradox of a particle and a wave, that the difference between a photon being both a particle and a wave at the same time in language, without I don't want to belabor it, but it's wrong to think of mathematics as being any kind of a language. It's not a language. That's a metaphor. It's a bad metaphor. But anyway,
hopefully we'll have more disagreements in future, because my primary school physics teacher said that maths is nothing but the what do you call it? The slave maid of physics. It is the language of the world expressed on paper. But again, disagreements make us richer. Getting to the end, does anybody want to get final thoughts? Mine would be don't give up hope. Go ahead, Carlo.
We talked off camera. Chris and I were talking about Heidegger's being in time. And Heidegger he admired this great German poet, Friedrich Hegel. But he also could see the dangers of what was coming of the mathematization of the
natural world.
Of the natural world. Okay. I lost my train of thought, but let me just leave it there. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, I was going to go back to Ben talking about what's going on in Europe and the unrest. I mean, there is some unrest taking place in Serbia because the pro-EU types are contesting the elections. Now Serbian government is
a recount
mistaken.
Or a
Yeah, going to do the election again, which is really an admission to the opposition. Yeah, maybe it was rigged. I don't think they should do that. But anyway, that's what they're going to do. And we have the Polish farmers blocking the Ukraine border and dumping grain and things like that. So it seems to me that the situation where the Poles used to be pro hot for the war and pro-Ukraine now are turning on Ukraine. And there's more demonstrations was this in Europe or France or where?
This is Warsaw.
Oh, Warsaw. Oh
yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of anger there. So
the Czechs, the Poles, sorry, I'll stop sharing.
So it looks like the rats are leaving the sinking ship. I mean, why would the Poles? Because the Polish government's not doing anything to move those farmers away from the border and stopping those trains and trucks. It's almost as if they want to collapse Ukraine faster so Poland can move in and take its share, and Germany
Sinister,
can take back
I like
East
it.
Prussia and so on and stuff like that. Something's going on.
Yeah,
but they want to take that. Yeah.
That was a very short honeymoon, right? The Polish Ukrainian Commonwealth or whatever it was. It's an instant divorce now.
How do you see it there? Do you think there's something going on there, or is that just local farmers' reactions to the?
Well, there's two things here.
Grain.
Yeah, it's basically they don't have to pay all the tariffs to grow their stuff in Ukraine, as in BlackRock, Monsanto. These people don't have to pay the same that the EU laws say. It's much more expensive in Europe to grow stuff, and all of this cheap shit is coming in and putting them out of a job, and that's going. It's hypocrisy, and it's going across the board everywhere. I wish I didn't see it as sinister as you, but it might be an accelerationist move on behalf of the Poles. Yeah, let's just collapse this as fast as possible. That's new to me, an interesting thought.
Yeah. Yeah, because now while Medvedev and Putin have both said everything east of the Dnieper is ours, we're going to take it.
Oh, that map was...
And Putin in Carlson's interview said, he mentioned the Ukraine, the Hungarian areas. And Putin said, yes. That was very interesting. He spent 5 minutes on this. He said, yes, I remember back when I was a younger man, I took a tour on a motorcycle through Soviet Union, went to Western Ukraine, and I saw all these signs in this language. You didn't understand. I was told it's Hungarian. And I start talking to these guys. They're all speaking Hungarian. They're all Hungarians. They want to be part of Hungary. They don't want to be part of the Soviet Union. They want to be part of Hungary. And as far as I'm concerned, why not? That's what he said. Why not? Why can't they go back to be part of Hungary? The Russian areas are ours. The Germans can take back Prussia. The Poles can take what they had. They can take. It's okay with me.
Yeah, it was
that's what's developing.
I laughed a bit when he said they were wearing three-piece suits and black cylinders, Hungarian costume or something like that. But yeah, I remember this.
He thought they were an acting troupe or something, but no, they were.
Well, maybe next time we talk Lviv, it will be Lvov, and it will be Polish. I don't know.
Yeah, it
We'll
might
just have
be.
to-
But anyway, I don't know what state of the union the United States is in now, but the
It's
state of
bad.
the world is not good. I hope we can somehow remain optimistic. I'm encouraged by you, Ben, because I sometimes get down in the dumps and convince myself there's no.
Then
hope,
I'm
but,
glad. As part of the resistance axis in Europe, which is right now Slovakia, Hungary. Let's see. I guess Olaf Scholz a bit. At least they're dumping on him because he didn't send his rockets. So yeah, I'm glad to give you a little bit of hope. All right, Carlo.
That's
of
good.
course. Anything to end on?
No, I have nothing else. Sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but
No, I love
your
your
interesting.
your
I thought
Heideggerian.
you were going to bring in Wittgenstein and the language that what cannot be said cannot be expressed. Thoughts can only be expressed by words, and without words there are no thoughts. So therefore, what is mathematics anyway? What thoughts does it express? It just expresses equalities between things. I mean,
yeah, I do agree with Wittgenstein, but mostly with the philosophical investigations, not with the Tractatus. His later work, where he basically slams the Tractatus, essentially, not directly, but it's a much more open.
Yeah, I think I don't see the. He said that, but when I read both, I read both of them, and I think I understood them basically. But the Tractatus, he tried to set out that thing that what words can't express can't be thought. So it's pointless asking questions about. And most of the philosophical problems are just non-problems because it's just confusion of a language. But then he modifies he decides to get more involved in language and about the language games and how language is used and the meaning of words. He gets involved now, but I don't think he really overturns what he first said, but he sure does modify it a lot. That's true.
Yeah, the first it was the Tractatus seemed too positivist for me.
Well, he was influenced by the AJ Ayer and all this.
Yeah, the Vienna Circle, right?
Yeah, the Vienna Circle.
AJ Ayer and Carnap, although Carnap himself saw his position as being too narrow. AJ Ayer, right? The Max Black, people like that. And so anyway, well, I guess that's I went back down the rabbit hole. I'm sorry, guys.
No, I think some people are, including me, are here for that, to learn, to be enriched. So maybe next time we'll do a deeper dive in philosophy, AI, language, and all that.
I see AI as being I think we have 3 apocalyptic dimensions to the world.
3.
Now.
Let's end on 3.
Climate change. Okay, climate change.
Nukes.
Nuclear weapons, and strong AI.
All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Sorry.
End of the world.
All right. Anyway,
hope we can appear next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. I don't think Billy Bob is back until Friday, the 15th, but maybe we'll be back on Tuesday with another program. I'd like to thank the regulars, including Paulie, Fleur, Dust James, and before that, Todd, for standing by, and we'll catch you all next time. Please drop a like and a subscribe.
All right.
It's very
Bye.
stimulating. It's always a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Thank you, Chris.
You're a pleasure to talk with. I love the disagreements, especially.
Brilliant.
Oh, it's just debating ideas. We don't know who's right, who's wrong.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everyone. Take care.
All right.
Bye,
Take care.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.